Hi, this is Michael K. Reynolds, and we are here for another edition of Marketing Cafe Live. And we're live in the Marketing Cafe and streaming in several other locations. And today we've got a great topic that we're going over today, 5 traits of exceptional leaders. And speaking of very exceptional people, I'm really excited to introduce Simon Childs. Now, Simon Childs is someone that I've met through the Marketing Cafe. Marketing Cafe we have on Clubhouse. We have the Facebook group here. But I met him through Clubhouse. Amazing individual from the UK with lots of hidden talents, many talents. And one of them is extremely interesting and fascinating. And you're going to get to learn that before we dive into the 5 exceptional traits. He is a experienced, well, you call it headhunter, talent recruiter, and he's worked with some of the top talent through the UK, throughout the world. And this is my friend, Simon Childs. Simon Childs, welcome to Marketing Cafe Live.
Hello, Michael. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me along.
All right. So, Simon, before we get rolling in on a few things, to be clear on what it is that you do, if someone called you and said, Simon, I want you to do some work for me, what would that work be?
Well, I lead 2 companies in the UK. My first company is called Optitude 360, Executive Search Psychology. So the key thing that I do is I help companies find senior leaders or C-suite leaders, and I help them save on the cost of making bad hires, Michael.
All
The
right.
second thing that I do is I also run an outplacement company and a career consulting company. So I work with companies that are looking to transition staff to new roles. So, make people redundant or what have you. I help counsel the people that they're letting go. And then I also work with individuals one-to-one who feel stuck at work to step up or step out of their organizations.
All right. Well, we've all had a period of our time where we have wanted to both step up and step out too. I think we've all had that experience. Now, we're going to be talking about 5 exceptional traits of leaders. And here is the good news is that we have the Marketing Cafe Academy. Simon's done a longer version of this that's available in the Marketing Cafe Academy. And the good news is the Marketing Cafe Academy is totally free. So if you go to marketingcafe.club, just go there, sign up, and you'll get to see not only this recording, we'll have this shortly after we do this, but you'll also see a very slick version that Simon did. It's the most slick training that we have in the whole process. And so go there. We've got lots of other training as well. But first, Simon, before we get into the 5 exceptional traits of a leader, show us your custom guitars. As you can see, I'm a huge music enthusiast. I've been playing guitars forever, but
Yeah.
Simon takes it to a whole new level. He
Okay.
actually makes guitars.
So I've been making electric guitars, Michael, for about the last 10 years. I won't bore you with how I first got into this. Basically, well, in fact, do you know what? I needed a guitar repaired. I took it to someone. They fixed my guitar for me and they done a really good job. We become friends, and because I like woodwork, I just said, wouldn't it be great if we could build guitars ourselves? And that was pretty much it. The rest
See,
is
I had
history.
that thought myself. Never. I would never think of making a guitar.
Well, it's a shame I don't have the first guitar that I made here today. So for the guitar enthusiasts out there, I tend to make Fender type guitars. That's what I've made the most of. But these days, I tend to make more specialist guitars. It really depends on what people like or want at the time. So I'm on about guitar number 28 now, but I've got a
Wow.
couple of guitars here today. So well, I must admit, I just do this. I just build guitars for people privately these days, and I call myself Inspired Guitars. So this one that I've got here, see if I can show the camera. This is what I call the jazz inspired. So I really like jazz guitar. This is an ergonomic guitar, which, probably looks quite unfamiliar to a lot of people. But the way that this guitar sits on you, I know you can't see it sitting on me entirely, but it will kind of sit on me without a strap and just give me absolute access to the fretboard. So that's one. Like I said, when I started building Fender type guitars. So I've built an awful lot over the years. What I've got here is, what I should say is I build guitars that you can't really buy. So I'm not copying Fender to the absolute nail. I'm simply building Fender type guitars that I've not seen Fender do outside of their custom shop. So what I've got here is a walnut Strat. I think I've got Eric Clapton. I can't remember what they're called, pickups in here or what have you, by Bare Knuckle. It's a wonderful guitar. Just a little bit on the heavy side because it's a walnut guitar. But hey, it's pretty good. And I'll tell you what, I did an experiment. At one point where, rather than using all of the exotic woods that I'd normally use to build guitars, I built a guitar out of some of the cheapest timber that I could possibly lay my hands on. This is like construction timber. And again, I built this interesting looking little guitar here, which it's very, it's really quite short. And the actual head of this guitar is an interesting shape. It's for one side to the other. Honestly, this guitar is just wonderful. It just plays very, very smoothly. I've got Iron Gear pickup. So Iron Gear is a British pickup maker. So yeah, I tell you what, I've become passionate about building electric guitars 10 years ago. Like I said, I'm on number 28 right now. The vast majority of them have been sold. So the ones that I've kept back are just, like sometimes the prototypes that I've built first just to sort of prove the concept. So there you go. Yeah, I'm passionate about
If
guitar.
you want an amazing, talented executive for your organization, you can go to Optitude 360. If you want your own custom guitar, then you can also go to Optitude 360 and hunt Simon down. At some point, we're going to do a full show called 5 Traits of Exceptional Guitar Makers. But today, our topic is 5 Traits of Exceptional Leaders. And now this is basically Simon created this article. It went viral. He's created a video. As I said, it's in the Marketing Cafe Academy that you'll be able to review. But we're going to go over it today. This will be a little bit more conversational. So 5 Traits of Exceptional Leaders. This is done with Simon, recruiting lots of executives, working with lots of executives, the very top people. And usually you get to ask a lot of questions that people don't normally ask. So you have a lot of information that people don't have. And so this is really a really valuable 5 traits. And so let's get rolling. 5 traits of exceptional leaders. Simon, what's the first one?
Okay. Just before I talk about the first one, at Optitude 360, we specialize in using psychology and psychometrics to help companies to find senior leaders, senior managers, you name it, predominantly C-suite. So I wrote the original article, 5 Traits of Exceptional Leaders, about 3 years ago. It was my first article, my first formal article on LinkedIn. I honestly thought I was going to get about 50 hits, Michael, if I'm absolutely honest. And I think in 3 days after publication, it hit 22,000.
Wow.
So I got a lot of positive feedback. Like I said, you can go and check out the video that I've created about this on the Marketing Cafe. So, I think you'll find it interesting. I'm really quite academic, guys. I'm really quite academic. I'm really I'm passionate about psychology. But when I wrote this article, rather than basing it on the typical business school academia that we often see when, people are talking about, these sort of issues about leadership, I thought, no, actually, I'm going to base this simply on some of the best people, some of the best CEOs, MDs, finance directors, HR directors that I meet on a day-to-day basis. I'm just gonna kick off with a quick quote from the article. An ancient African proverb states, "If you want to go quickly, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together." So often situations arise in business, particularly in times of crisis, when it's imperative to go as far as you can, as quickly as you can. And this, my friends, is where we find that, the exceptional leaders will really excel. So, what are the 5 traits? So, again, I'm not going to go into masses of detail. What I would suggest is go and have a look at the video. But the first, and probably one of the most important traits, is they don't rely solely on motivation, they inspire. So, when I talked about this, I said, I amended a proverb: you can teach a man to fish, and you can feed him for a day, or you can inspire a man to fish and you'll lead him for a lifetime. In order to be a leader, you need to have followers. If you're a manager, people might follow you, but it will be through sort of compliance, not necessarily because they want to. So the first trait is all about the way that you gain the respect of the people that you work with. Does that resonate with you, Michael?
Yeah, so probably to tighten in on it, how would you best describe the difference between motivating? And so we have this vision of this coach, the halftime speech, raising his fist and go out there and get him, as opposed to someone who inspires. So maybe it's this great leader out there that you're just really drawn to, and you
Yeah.
want to be with them. How would you best describe the difference
Okay.
between those two approaches?
I'm glad that you asked. They do lots of different things, and don't get me wrong, there's no one set way of getting people to buy into you. But what I consistently see is that exceptional leaders are great listeners. They listen to their staff. They understand. They'll take the time to understand where this person is at the moment in the organization, where they want to go, and they'll help them get there by whatever means they need to do that. And I think one of the big physical things that they can do, and this might sound strange, they will be hands off. They'll let people do things their own way, and I think that this sort of thing is so key. Sometimes when we start at organizations, it can be a real challenge when you've got someone, if you've got like a micromanager. These are among some of the worst people that I meet, the sort of person that's sitting on your back all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to when you have someone motivational saying, "Let's go take that hill," whereas the inspirational leader will have people that say, "I've determined we can go around the hill with no problem at all," because you allow your people to be creative with that. So
I'm just
that's the first trait of the exceptional leaders, and they inspire rather than just motivating, rah rah rah.
Absolutely.
Number two on the 5 traits of exceptional leaders is.
They choose their battles carefully. So, very simply, exceptional leaders I consistently see are very, very skilled in the art of war. And what do I mean by that? So they know what to attack, and they know what to defend in terms of their battles. When they're fighting a battle with, say, a competitor, even though they will want to win, they will still exercise a certain amount of fairness. Because sometimes it doesn't always pay to burn our bridges in a competitive battle. Because yeah, as we've seen over the last 2 years, markets can change and situations can change very, very quickly. The other thing is, that if they will not become invested, they won't completely. Well, if they've started on a project, say, let's say it's worth multi millions, and they start on the project and they suddenly realise we're doing the wrong project here. I tend to find that, the great leaders will say, hang on, guys, wait a minute. I know this is going to be painful, but we need to stop now. Because one of the things that I consistently see in corporate life these days is often leaders will become invested in something when a situation has changed. And because so much money has been spent on it, you end up with projects or schemes that are almost too big to stop. It takes a very, very strong leader who's got the confidence to say, we've picked the wrong direction.
It's so common in large organizations wherein someone new will come in and,
Absolutely.
they'll go, why are you guys doing this way? Or why are you working on this project? And then someone will say, oh yeah, don't touch that. That's the owner's pet project, or that, there's always these kind of things that are happening in there. For me, this was a huge struggle, because when I started off as a leader, I was a whack-a-mole leader. Anything popped up, I had to, beat and win and be in charge and dominate. And it you learn that it molds to these it molds to these different things, to where you actually have to see first before you shoot. Like, don't shoot friendlies, don't, choose those shots really wisely. I remember John Maxwell, in talking about relationships. He's a great teacher on relationships, but he was sharing the first year of his marriage. And he said, because he was an orator, he was trained to be able to argue, basically. He discovered that in the first year of his marriage, he had won every argument, but he was losing his marriage. and
Absolutely.
and that's what, I used to
Absolutely.
think that it was this thing of, the greatest warrior is everyone that people will follow, but that's not the case. And so, I felt like if I ever showed a sign of weakness, or if I ever lost a battle, that they would think that I was weak. But really, I just looked foolish. I was just the fool on the hill rather than the warrior on the hill. And it took a long while for me to realize that, you got to pick those really carefully, and you actually might be wrong. And it
Yeah.
takes time to kind of process things and figure out, maybe they're right, maybe you're wrong.
One very quick takeaway from this sort of thing is there is a butterfly effect when we engage with our subordinates at work. I don't like using that word, subordinates. When we're working with our people, if we're the leader and we engage with them in the wrong way, problem is there's a butterfly effect. You never quite know what's going to happen, because you might think you've won a battle, and you might go home and you might completely forget that you've called someone out at the end of the day and given them a dressing down in front of, other people. Now that person, they might go home. They might have road rage on the way home. They could get home. They could kick the dog, boot the cat, hit the wife, hit the kids, whatever it might be. There is always an equal and opposite reaction. So, like I said, I tend to find that the smartest, the best leaders that I meet, or the most effective leaders, everybody wants to feel safe at work. When you go to work, particularly if you're going to be a good follower, you'll want to feel safe. That is what exceptional leaders are exceptionally good at. They're exceptionally good at making their people feel wanted and comfortable, so that that person, when the whistle blows and they need to go over the top of the trench, they'll do it willingly. They'll do it for the leader.
And they'll do it automatically. And that was probably one of the biggest things, is that as a leader, I thought it was about being right all the time, when
Yeah.
the truth was, it was learning to know when you're wrong. And that's a lifetime skill. And then shockingly realize how many times I was wrong. The worst thing that ever happened to me was they put this phone in my office, where at one button I could contact anybody in the office. And so within 3 or 4 seconds of hearing something that went wrong, I would already determine whose fault it was, push the button, and I'm already giving feedback. And, getting rid of that phone and giving myself another minute, another hour, another day, it was amazing how many times I was wrong. All right. So that's two traits so far, about being inspiring, choosing your battles carefully. What is the third trait of exceptional leaders?
Okay, so the third trait is really interesting. They don't complain about situations, they change them. Now, what do I mean? What do I mean by this? So, quite often, when a new CEO or a new finance director shows up at a new company, they sort of feel that they've got something to prove. I've met people that will go in, and sometimes people immediately say, "Oh, well, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. We're not doing it like that anymore." And they'll make changes really, really quickly. What I tend to find is that some of the best leaders that I meet, they work on something that I call the 3-month rule. They'll go in, and initially it will seem like these guys aren't doing an awful lot, because people don't like change. And quite often, people will be expecting that there's going to be change that in some way is going to hurt them. So coming back to what I said earlier, people simply want to feel safe at work. That it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This feeling of safety is the first thing that you need to establish, and that the other comforts as you go up the list, those are secondary. People want to feel that they're secure. So they don't complain about situations, they change them. I'm going to give a very simple analogy, and I'll let the listeners today go and have a look at the video, because there's some more on this stuff and on there. But if you imagine you've got a leader, and he's cutting through a forest. So that leader, let's say that the leader, he'll jump in his helicopter. He's Huey, for want of a better word. I don't know why. He'll get above the tree line, and he'll do his blue sky thinking. He'll look out into the distance, and he'll say, right, well, okay, I can see what's coming. I know what's coming now. And then the smart leaders will put a parachute on, they'll get a megaphone, and they'll jump out of that helicopter. And as they're going down, parachuting down, they're using the megaphone, talking to all of the people that are working up the trees, cutting them down from the top downwards, saying, okay, then, guys, I'm going to cascade the message of this is where we're going, this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to get there. And do you know what? You're all doing a fantastic job. He'll get on the ground, he'll take his parachute off, and then he'll go and mix among the people that are on the ground. Now, one of the biggest complaints that I ever hear is that the senior management is quite often out of touch. What I tend to find is the smartest leaders, regardless of their position and regardless of how big the organization is, they will walk around and they'll talk to people and they'll take the temperature of the organization, because it's generally the people on the ground who are probably working the hardest, in fairness, to deliver whatever it is that company does. That's another one of the traits that I see.
Yeah, it's so important. And, a lot of times people, it's almost a cliche about a new leader coming in and will just kind of walk around, visit a lot of places and stuff. But there's two ways that that's done. One is that they're actually, I would say, kind of pretending that they're not, making any changes, and they're just
Absolutely, yeah,
saying,
that's
"Hey,
true. Actually,
I can't wait till the 3 months is over so I can start just get my machete out." But one of the key things to this change is, even in the most dysfunctional of organizations, there's great things happening. And it's not until you really pay attention that you discover those, because you're going to trample on the gardens. And so during that period of time, it's not just a cooling off time, it's actually figuring out, is there stuff I can reclaim? Because reclaiming is so much easier than starting from scratch and ripping out the roots. And so many times you'll come in and someone will say, hey, this person is just, you just got to get rid of them. There's no other way. And then if you give it a little time, you realize that, if they're just in the wrong spot in the organization, or they're just doing the wrong things, or no one ever heard that this is what they were really good
yeah,
at. And so that's the opportunity, is to really see, what are the weeds, what are the good plants, because it's so much more efficient if you can pull out a few weeds than to tear the whole thing down and then to plant from scratch too
it's
as well.
it's a really good analogy. It's a really good analogy, Michael, because we talk about people getting into the weeds when they first go into a company. And one little tip that I think could be worthwhile to some people out there. Hey, I'm a headhunter and I don't want to put myself out of a job. But when you're looking for staff, whoever it might be, let's just say developers, if you're in an IT company, lots of companies immediately go out to market looking for developers, whereas some smart companies ask the people that already work there, do you know anybody? And honestly, I've seen some crazy good people just come from recommendations of people that were already working at the company. You know, this isn't going to work for absolutely every level of the company. If you're looking for an exec, you need to get proper help to do this. Otherwise, mistakes can be ridiculously expensive. So yeah, it's interesting, but
Yeah, it's a
I
great way.
love the point.
A great way to get people, and that's a lot of it is we also think of change, that we've actually got to change all the processes, and sometimes it's just changing the attitudes and the approaches. And one thing is, if you go into an organization and you discover someone who, the prior management said they're unmanageable, but you realize they were just poorly managed, if you reclaim that individual and you give them new hope and you give them new guidance, they will be with you forever. So
Oh yeah.
you want to
Oh
you
yeah.
want to look for those for sure. Okay, so far we've got about inspiring people, exceptional leaders. They inspire. They don't just motivate. They choose their battles carefully. They deliver change.
Yeah.
But they do it through listening and making good decisions. Number 4 on the 5 traits of exceptional leaders.
Okay, now this one, it sounds simpler than it really is, but it's that they build exceptional teams. In my experience, a great leader must be able to build and develop a great team. And if you're going to build a great team around you, you need to be the person who is setting the example for that team. You are better off taking your time to find the right sort of individuals that you want. And like I said earlier, tasking them with what you need them to do. Letting people know things like, I don't mind how you do it. If you run into a problem, my door's open, come back and see me. But, sometimes, like I said, some of the worst leaders that I meet are the micromanagers. They've got the long handled screwdrivers. They can't help but dig in where it's really not wanted or needed. And it kind of demeans people because people are often really, really proud about the things that they deliver. And you will be amazed at just how a thank you or you've done a great job, how far that can go when it's said sincerely. So, in terms of bringing teams together, it really is. It's about visibility. It's about being there for people when you need them. It's about understanding what it is that makes the. It's too big a topic to get into for this, but thinking about the individual components of that team. How do they all serve each other? And how are you going to be a servant leader to them?
This was one of the hardest things too, as well, because one of the easier ways to build a team, not an exceptional team, but a team, is to have only a collection of prototypical quote team players. Well, if you have the people they're just naturally suited to be quote team players, you're going to end up with a mediocre team, because you have to have the ones that are difficult to put into a team, that are challenging to put into a team, that's how you have an exceptional team. That's how you have a championship team. And so it was always, interesting for me to hear, oh, well, you're not a team player, or this person's not a team player. It's, well, maybe you're not a team leader, and a team leader is able to take people that are very very gifted, very talented, very strong-willed, and rather than bending them, finding the perfect way of how am I going to blend all these together. Look, there are some people that they're not worth the time. You just
Yep,
don't have enough time.
yep,
You got
that's
goals to
right.
do. But for the most part, 95% of all people will fit marvelously into a team, But if you want to have an exceptional team, you've got to also have the exceptionally hard to have on the team players and figure out a
So,
way to get it done.
so I'll tell you what, I'm just going to give out one little tip, one direct tip that people can take away and use if they're building exceptional teams. Um, Obviously, if you're the leader and you just happen to be in charge, you're probably in charge of like a number of teams. But every team that you have, particularly if you've got some extraordinary people on there, you're going to need a strong team leader. Get ready for this, guys, who can deal with uncertainty.
Mm.
Because, what you tend to find in entrepreneurs out there, these people are very, very good at dealing with the ambiguous, dealing with things that are uncertain. Whereas what I tend to find, when you've got people that are the real sort of ingrained company people that just want to go in and they want to do their job and they want to do a great job, but they're less interested in having that level of stress or that level of ambiguity. If you can recognize the people that can stand there calmly when it's all falling about the place and calmly say, well, okay, then, guys, it's all right. I'm not going to panic you. I'm not going to start running around with my head on fire, or hair on fire, rather. This is the way that we're going to go. And if you pick one person like that for a team, and then you get them involved in the actual recruiting process for the rest of the team, you'd be surprised at just how quickly and how well things can grow.
Well, it's so important and critical. And then it's that moment of that leader and that unique individual is that when the cows are flying by and the winds are blowing and witches'
It's
toes
Kansas.
are curling underneath the houses and stuff. And there's one person in the middle of it. That's their moment. And that's a moment that's forever. Okay, so we've come to the last of the 5 traits of exceptional leaders. We started off with exceptional leaders. They don't just motivate, wave pom poms, they inspire, they choose their battles very carefully, they deliver change, they do it through listening and being very mindful, they build exceptional teams. And now the last of the 5 traits of exceptional leaders is
Okay, they talk less, but they achieve more. So let me clarify this a little. And, what I would suggest to anyone who's watching, please go and have a look at the Marketing Cafe and have a look at the video that we have out there. There's a lot more to this than I'm just going to try and give you a flavor of this. This is all about listening. So a quick example. What I tend to find with very, very senior leaders, you've got a CEO at a company, they will listen carefully to what everybody around the boardroom is saying. And, they'll ask questions, but they won't necessarily put their opinion forward until they've thought through what they're going to say. Why do people earn the big bucks? Quite often, another question that I'm asked is, and this is related to this, it's not fair. We've got like the CEOs on like 500,000 a year or what have you. Well, I'll tell you something, being the person in charge is a really, really tough place to be. You will be the first person to be taken to task over the decisions that you make. If if you have investors, if you're a quoted company, excuse me, the doo-doo can hit the fan very, very quickly, and you can be replaced, just as quickly. All you have to do is have a look at, say, English football managers recently. But hey, and I'm sure American football managers too. So I'll park that one there. The key here is about listening, your approach to communication. When you're negotiating, I'll just give you one more nugget. When you're negotiating, when I talk to some of the most exceptional leaders about the negotiation process, these guys are procrastinators, which might sound, well, that's a bit odd. Well, hang on, wait a minute. We've got a CEO who's a procrastinator. Well, it's what I would call professional procrastination. They'll deliberately hang out on deals to put people on edge to get what they want. So, they'll use their communication skills to their benefit. They'll think the messages that they're giving out to their teams very carefully. Final thing that I'm going to say on this is um, I remember talking to a very senior director at a company called Prudential, which is a big life insurance company in London City. And a friend, my mate Dave, who was this director, he said when the CEO comes in, he said, this guy is unbelievable. He said he glides around the office like a swan on water. But he also said that, like that swan on water, all that we ever see is the top half. You don't see the legs going at 100 miles an hour underneath the surface. The thing about the swan is those legs are running really hard. And as a leader, you need to give over a persona of calm confidence to your people. No one likes an exploder. No one likes your sort of leader who's very non-committal. No one likes the type of leader who's going to make promises that he can't keep. They talk less, but they achieve more because they think through the things that they do. As the Yorkshiremen in England say, 2 ears, 1 mouth, to be used in that order.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we don't want our leaders to be in a panic, sweat coming all over their face, and we want them to be very calm, but we also want them to care. So it's actually kind of good to hear that, well, they didn't sleep all that well last night, or this happened, because we want them to care deeply. And as far as this talk less but achieve more, we had a group of business leaders that would get together once a week for years and years and years.
Absolutely.
And we have one gentleman who we would come, we'd have a topic, we'd talk about it. It's an hour and a half. We're having lunch and going through the whole process. And there'd be one gentleman who would hardly say anything, but we would always end the meeting by all the heads turning towards him at the end. And he would sum up everything that we were trying to say for an hour and a half in about 2 minutes of just pure poetry. And there was no question, Simon, he was the leader at the table. So that speaking less is so valuable. Clearly something that I don't excel at. I'm speaking all the time.
Look,
So this has been the 5 traits of exceptional leaders, and this is if you want to connect with Simon, go to Optitude 360. And as we've been mentioning, is in the Marketing Cafe Academy, we have all these little trainings, and Simon's got a 10-minute training. It's got visuals. It's really good on this very topic. This will be in there as well. And you can get there by going to marketingcafe.club, which is our official website for the Marketing Cafe on Clubhouse. And all the connections are there. The Academy is totally free, so just sign up for it and start enjoying the training that is in there. Well, Simon, this has been great. The 5 traits of
absolutely.
exceptional leaders. And thank you so much for being the guest here. And I think this was an exceptional session that we had. So thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much, Michael.
And it was, of course, fabulous to get to see Simon's guitar, a custom guitar. So if you're catching this in the middle or towards the end, make sure you go to the beginning. He's extraordinarily gifted individual, and we're really grateful to have him. So that's it. It is 5 exceptional traits of leaders with Simon Childs, and we will see you next time here in Marketing Cafe Live. Thanks so much for joining us.